there. I've got a cool knife to show you today. This knife comes to me from a friend and fellow collector who lives in Canada. He saw the work I did on that 1930s Remington Boy Scout knife, and it made him think of an old carbon steel knife that he had, so he sent it down to see if I might help him with some issues on it and clean it up. And before I do that, I thought I'd make a video so we could kind of do a little before and after. But I really wanted to talk about the history of this knife too, because it's really interesting. What you're looking at is a World War II British naval knife. And it just got a lot of cool history behind it. So before we look at the tools and everything, let's talk about that. And I guess the best place to go to do that, first of all, is always the tang stamp, if there is one. And there is one. And there's two words there: Wolstenholme and Sheffield. Well, I think most of us know that Sheffield is a very famous knife-making city in England with a lot of history. And the Wolstenholme cutlery played a big part in that. Now, at first I thought this was Roman numerals, like a 1 and an X and an L, and I thought, well, what is that, like 50, take away 10, take away 1, 39. I was like, that's not how you write 39 in Roman numerals, so I better look this up because I really don't know what I'm talking about. So the source that I used was SheffieldCollectibleKnives.com, and let me just, it turns out that this is a very storied trademark, and let me just read to you what they say there on that website. George Wolstenholme, Sheffield, England. Arguably Sheffield's finest cutler, forever associated with the IXL Bowies of the great American Bowie knife era. So that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. George was the third in a line of knife makers. I guess his grandfather started the company in the mid-1700s. But it was George that really grew the company, made it famous, and propelled it to the forefront of Sheffield's knife makers. They were given this patent, not patent or trademark, I guess, in 1831. So that's pretty cool. So while we have the main blade out, let's talk about that. It's supposed to be a sheepsfoot blade, and it obviously has been shortened and reprofiled. Sheepsfoot blade has a straight edge all the way to the tip, and then it will come and abruptly curve down with a swedge. Let me get the only other sheepsfoot blade that I have right now and show you. That's what a sheepsfoot blade is supposed to look like, right? It's quite a tip here for scoring and things. So this blade is obviously broken at some point, and it was shortened, reprofiled incorrectly, because really the correct way to do it would have been to bring the top down and not the bottom up. And the reason that you don't bring the bottom up generally is this right here. Now you've got the point that actually sticks up outside of the liner and can snag. I want to consult with the owner before we talk about doing anything there. One fix to that possibly would be to take down this really big stop here so that the knife blade drops in a little further and you don't have this situation where the point is sticking up above the liner. Now, if we do that, the blade doesn't stick up here as proud. And the reason they made them this way, I think, is so you didn't have to use the nail nick. You had a sailor, so it's a naval knife. If you were a sailor with wet hands or something, you could use a pinch grip. So I think my call would be to leave it like that, leave it historically accurate where it sticks up that high. But again, if that's an issue, we want to get that down, I think I can drop that down without taking off any more of the end of the blade. Okay, the other things I see here, there's a little wave here in the edge, a little bend. Maybe we can straighten that out. Someone's been hammering on the spine at some point in time. Hey, it's a World War II era knife, right? I could probably straighten that out with a diamond stick. You can see where it's been polished or ground. That's probably to remove rust and stains. There's still some staining. Those typically tend to be pretty stubborn, but I'll probably put it to the buffing wheel with some compounds and see what I can do to clean it up. So that's the main blade, some of the issues there. The other main tool on the top is a can opener, and I think this is just a single-use tool. I can't see any other function other than a can opener for that. It is carbon steel. This knife is very easy to date because right here in the can opener is stamped 1942. Like a lot of these military knives, they put the date right in there. And the owner tells me that this broad arrow here is a symbol that shows that this is official British government issued equipment, and that you often found that on other government issued equipment from Britain during this time frame. So pretty cool. So what was going on in Britain in 1942? Well, obviously World War II. That was the main event and concern for most people. It was in full swing. The British were fighting on all fronts. They were fighting in Germany and France and in North Africa. They were fighting in as far away places as Malaysia and Madagascar. The Royal Air Force was doing a lot of bombing raids over German cities. It was kind of their payback time for the Battle of Britain, when they were bombed for 57 consecutive nights. Winston Churchill was the prime minister. It was his first term. What else was going on in the war? It was also the year that there was the Battle of Stalingrad and the Battle of Midway, two pretty decisive moments in World War II. On the lighter side, for us Yanks, a couple of cultural things that were going on. The movie Casablanca came out in 1942, as well as Bambi. And the most popular song at the time was White Christmas by Bing Crosby. On the back is the star of the show, the giant honking Marlinspike. Being a sailor's knife or a naval knife, it's going to have a Marlinspike. Marlinspikes are used to work with rope and rigging, work loose knots and things like that. So they need to be beefy. They need to lock up real strong, which, believe me, this one does. This one's reinforced also here with washers. So that's really cool. It does look to have a curl here at the tip. I think we can probably tap that straight. Hopefully it will not break off. If it does, I think you can easily sharpen this and not miss a beat. But you can see more carbon standing here on the back springs, and how beefy those back springs are. Stainless steel, not stainless steel, but steel liners. And you do not want your finger under that when it closes, trust me. It has a bail. I think it's just steel pinned in here. And one other tool that's more not as noticeable is the screwdriver. It's just kind of an extension of the separator here. It sticks straight out, and it's designed to work with, obviously, slotted fasteners. More washers here to reinforce. The liners, the scales on the liners look to be like a Bakelite or something, some early form of plastic. And it's heavily knurled or given this diamond treatment like a gun stock, so it's not slippery to wet hands. The other thing that I see about this knife that maybe I can improve, these military knives, first of all, are usually bomb-proof. They're built for really heavy-duty use, to withstand the rigors of war. But they're often cranked out very quickly. Think about everything that Britain was producing in 1942 for the war effort. Guns, boots, uniforms, tanks, planes. So yeah, these are well made, and the fact that it's still here and fully functional is a testament to that. But often not real refined, kind of crudely made. And one of the things I see here is that these pins in the center have just been kind of snipped off. They've just been cut off, and they're very rough, and they're proud, and they catch your fingers. It's the first thing really you feel when you grab the knife, is they scratch you. So I think I can actually grind those smooth and get them down a little bit without getting into the scale material there. And yeah, so that's I think that's about everything I wanted to say. We'll just stop here because I'll consult with the owner, and we'll do some work on this and come back and see what it looks like. Okay, well, time passes. And I'm back to end this rather lengthy video with a show of the restoration results. And just quickly on the outside there, you can see, first of all, around the washers there on the pivots, we were able to get rid of the rust and tarnish. I was able to shine up that screwdriver that was pretty badly tarnished. And the bail had a lot of tarnish and some rust inside. That's better now. You can see down inside of it now. You can see what's going on. It doesn't just look like a hole in the dirt. On the Marlinspike, I did give the Marlinspike a couple of whacks with a modeler's hammer. It straightened it out, but unfortunately it cracked it about halfway through, right at the tip. So that's pretty soft metal. If it's just the very tip, so should it come off, it can be resharpened easily. I'm just being kind of careful how I snap it closed. You can see the back of the springs there and the liners, how much better they look. And I guess that brings us to the blade. After consulting with the owner, he just pretty well deferred to me on what to do about that problem, and I decided just to leave it alone. I thought that I would leave the knife as historically original as possible and not make one change to correct another. So I didn't take anything off of here to get the blade to drop in there further to hide the tip. But as you can see, I did get a lot of the carbon staining out of it. Got a nice sheen on it. I was able to improve that edge that was hammered so badly there. It's a lot better looking. It's not rolled over anymore. Put a good sharp edge on it. So yeah, it looks a whole lot better. And it's easier to read the tank stamp now. And that leaves the can opener, which cleaned up nicely as well. But I think the best now down inside, it's still corroded. I got the rust out of there, but the blackening, there's really nothing you can do about that if you don't disassemble the knife or something. But the top of the liners look really good and shiny there. And the best thing I was able to do to this knife, in my opinion, was to smooth over these clipped, very rough pins. And I don't think that affects the knife, knife's originality one iota, but just makes it so much more comfortable. They don't snag you and catch you anymore. It makes the knife much more pleasurable to hold. And I was able to do that without getting into that plastic one little bit. This was my friend right here. All right, so that's a look at a World War II British Navy knife that I have kind of cleaned up under commission for a friend and a fellow collector. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate you watching. Have fun collecting.